Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Q&A Cafe, building your monthly financial reporting in Excel and SAP Business ByDesign with your host, Alex Waddell. Welcome back, Alex, to our Q&A Cafes. As this cafe will be recorded, my apologies, everyone will remain on mute as per usual. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions or chat box at any time, and we will try to get to them towards the end of the presentation, but you can always reach out to us afterwards. Don't forget to join us next week. That is going to be part 2 in our reporting and creating queries best practices in SAP Business One. And then just finally, I do want to remind everybody that due to the proximity to American Thanksgiving, we will not be having a Q&A Cafe next week, November the 24th. So without further ado, I will just hand it over to Alex.
Thanks, Catherine. Hello, everybody. So yeah, welcome to your Wednesday Cafe on financial reporting in Excel. So today, just a little bit about me, first of all. So yeah, my name is Alex Waddell. I've been working with VistaView for about 14 years. I have done many Business One and SAP ByDesign implementations, and my background is finance and accounting, so I do have a specific interest in financial reports and often work with clients to help kind of try and get that process as seamless as possible. And in that vein, today we are going to talk about specifically the Excel add-on, and more specifically the Excel add-on in kind of the context of your financial statements, because we do believe that it's a really great tool for presentation. And one of the great things about it is it's cheap or it's free, so you can essentially download the add-on. You can connect live to your ByDesign environment. And then the same way that you build reports directly inside SAP ByDesign, you can access those same reports, the same reporting elements, and it gives you that live link with SAP, plus the ability to sort of format the reports so that each month when you go in and you update it for your next month end, it's very easy to kind of just build out the effort once and modify your reports each month for just the monthly reporting data, essentially changing the periods on the report. So this will be of special interest to the accountants out there, your CFOs, the managers of financial reporting. If you do have any questions, yeah, even as we're going along, feel free to drop them in the panel. If I don't have a lot of questions, this demo will probably go fairly quickly, so I'm happy to take the time to answer your questions. And if I don't know the answer, I can probably at least steer you in the right direction. So look forward to lots of participation in this session. So with that, let's jump right into the demo. So we have done other sessions. So I'm going to be flipping between this Excel workbook and SAP a little bit. We have done previous sessions on how to build SAP, reports, specifically how to build financial reports. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but just refresh a couple of concepts there. So I'll primarily just be looking at the reports inside the General Ledger Work Center, but of course you can add any reports that you want to your workbook, and that's kind of the beauty of this solution. So I'm going to focus more on tips and tricks and kind of operate under the assumption that you already have an understanding of how to build the reports, how to modify selections and views. But if you do have questions in those areas, feel free to let me know. So one feature I really like is my priority report. So you can flag your reports with your little exclamation and grab the ones that you use the most. This is useful inside ByDesign. So if I grab a financial statement report, and you can see that we can obviously go in here and we have access to your bank of selections, your bank of views. So quick reminder, your selections are your parameters for your report. Your view is really the data, how you want to pivot the data in the report. And the fields that you want to enable or hide. So you use your selections and views in combination together. When you build selections and views, you have the ability to add them to your list. Anything you add will be saved as a personal selection. The same thing with the view. In addition to that, there are potentially corporate ones. So if you want to save selections and views, then you need to build this report inside the Business Analyst Work Center. I won't spend a lot of time on that. I'll assume people know that. And then you also have the SAP standard selections and views. So if we just go and let's just save some time and let me invoke something. So my demo environment is quite old, so I'm just going to grab some 2018 data. Let's just look at a comparative income statement. So very easily right here, I've got just a quick assemble report based on selections and views. And the reason I kind of like to focus on these two things is because they really are not tied together. So keep that in mind when you're creating your selections and views. Um, you know, the way that you're naming this selection is really about these parameters. So try to avoid describing elements of the view when you're describing the selection, because you may mix and match these in ways that you don't even realize at the time that you're building it. So how you want to marry them together, it just gives you a lot of flexibility in the report. So anytime we do change something in our selection and view, that is available to be seen inside the Excel add-on as well. So I'm going to pop back and forth between the two just so you can really see how they kind of collaborate together. What you'll probably find is you'll go to the SAP ByDesign report builder for certain things, like maybe more ad hoc stuff. And then your Excel worksheets will potentially be more like the recurring reports that you build each month. But once again, that's just a very personal decision. So the SAP add-on is available to you in the self-service overview. I'm not going to go through the process to install it, but you can just go to the install additional computer in software. Make sure your pop-up blocker isn't turned on. And then you'll get another panel that'll open up that'll show you other products that are available to you. So this is by far the most used one, which is going to be your SAP add-on for Microsoft Excel. You download this. You install that executable, so you will need admin rights on your local machine, or you will need your IT support to help you with that installation. So once it's installed, you are going to have a new ribbon showing inside your Excel toolbar. So your standard ribbons are still there unchanged, but you now have an SAP Business ByDesign. And depending on the status right now, it looks like I'm logged on. So that's why my log off button is. But when you first connect, you will see this sort of saying red. And then we're going to connect, and you're going to just verify that your URL is correct. So if this is the first time, you can literally cut and paste everything up to the .com into your URL. And then you're going to log in with your standard password that you use to connect to SAP. So if your password is correct and you successfully connect, you will get this little green icon. And at this point, you are able to start building out your Excel workbook. Now, I'm going to just start on a blank page, just walk you through a couple of, and this is a workbook that I use just for demonstration purposes. So you can see along the bottom, I have all sorts of tabs which represent different reporting areas. And this, I believe, is really the number one sort of feature of doing your financial reporting in Excel, because you can build in a single Excel workbook with an unlimited number of tabs, access to any of the SAP ByDesign reports, modules, to which your permissions will allow you access, which is really nice because if you are more of a financial reporting, manager, maybe your reports here are like your income statement, your balance sheets, various different copies of those reports with different pivots involved, different companies, however it is that you want to display the data. If you're more of a day-to-day accounting user, maybe this workbook is more like, your monthly reconciliation. So maybe your tabs across the bottom are things like prepaid accounts where you're accessing, specific GL accounts that you want to analyze each month. And then you just need to kind of come in here and refresh the dates each month to redo your reconciliations. So before I get ahead of myself and show you all of that, let's just start with how to actually drop a report into here. Very simple. So you're just going to go to your ByDesign ribbon, make sure you're connected, click on the insert report, and you'll see here that you will get a pop-up list of all of the reports. And you will see reports are duplicated, and that is because you likely have access to multiple work centers. So you can see financial statements is available to you through the General Ledger Work Center, through the Managing My Area Work Center, etc. So it does not matter which one you choose. These are all the same. So pick whichever financial statement report that you want. So let me zoom in a bit. I'm getting that request from someone. Let me know if that is still too small for people. And when you first drop your report in, it's going to come in based on whatever parameters are sort of the defaulted, selections and views. So something that's very important is when you're clicked on this gray area that is the report, that's how it's going to sort of understand what to activate for these buttons. So we want to make sure we're sitting inside this area of the report. And now I can manage this report in the same way that I just showed you inside SAP. So if I go to my list of selections, you can see here, this looks familiar. There's my 2018 consolidated, not eliminated. So I can run that same selection I ran before, and I can combine it with whatever view. So let's say I want to do my company comparative as an example. And so your report is going to, kind of collapse and expand as you see fit. Now, how do you actually manage inside your selections and views? This Show Hide tab is how you're going to activate your panels. So if you want to modify your view, you're going to need to activate your view panel. And this will stay active until you close it. And I do find when I'm working in here, oftentimes if I've got really wide reports, I don't hesitate to get this out of my way. You can also grab onto this panel and make it smaller, but that does cause you some challenges with perhaps reading some of the fields. So typically, yeah, don't hesitate to turn on your selection and view while you're working and designing your report, because those are obviously important to you. So just like inside SAP, the selections look the same. So I've got my company, my set of books, my year, etc. If we go back to our financial report here, go back to our selection, exactly the same data sets. So it doesn't matter how you work in it. The experience of selecting things is going to be a little bit different in Excel. So one of the first things you'll notice is your pop-ups for selecting, items and things like that. So if we are looking at, let's say our fiscal year, and we invoke our little pop-up box here. And for me, this is actually popping up, I think, on a different monitor. And this can cause you a little problem in Excel that I do run into sometimes, that this pop-up blocker will sometimes crash Excel. That's pretty rare, but it seems to usually happen in conjunction with certain events, like maybe presenting your screen in a meeting. So I think that's what's happening to me today. So not a totally ideal situation when we're trying to do this as a presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close out Excel. I'm going to reopen it. But you won't have this problem if you're just kind of running Excel by itself in your system. So let's reopen our financial reporting package, go back into my add-on, make sure I'm connected. So if any of you happen to be doing this same thing at the same time, you can test this out and see what it looks like. But unfortunately, I'm not going to invoke that pop-up again because I probably will get, kind of frozen again in my Excel. So let me just describe it to you instead. So when you're doing your selections and you invoke that pop-up, you're going to see a little panel that will pop up. If you do have a hard time finding it and you are running multiple monitors, chances are it's popped up inside your main monitor. So go and look there. It might be underneath another window if you're kind of a really busy PC like I have. And then when you select that, you have the same sort of options that you do inside ByDesign. So I'm going to invoke the pop-up here to kind of show you how it would compare. You're going to have a tab, so you're going to have the relative values and you're going to have your absolute values. So this is another thing I just really like to bring attention to if you're doing the Excel, financial report building book. Chances are this is your monthly, financial analysis workbook. So try and build your report with relative values. So choose options like the current fiscal year, current fiscal period. That way, each time you open up your Excel workbook, presumably a number of weeks later, all you're going to do is hit the refresh, and all of your data will automatically refresh in the system. So how does that happen if I've got my current fiscal year? This one is locked into a specific dynamic parameter, and I hit the refresh button, then it's going to refresh my data based on any parameters that are dynamic or any parameters that I've gone in here and manually modified. So once you're done with kind of building out your selections and views, you can always just close those panels. Now, as you change things inside the report, so let's say we do want to add something to this report. Let's maybe grab something like accounting period and drag it down into the columns. So probably be better if this was, it should be below company. Yeah, I just have a lot of blanks because once again, I said my demo data is kind of empty, but so you'll have a bunch of values here. So if this is a new sort of way that you want to view your data and you like the way that it looks, this is a good opportunity to maybe save this as a view that you can invoke. So you can do that either inside Excel or you can do it in ByDesign. So it's going to promote either direction. So how do you do that? You can just click on your little save view as icon here, and then you'll have the opportunity. So once again, remember to save your views based on the fact that this is combined with different reports. So this to me would be company period comparative, right? That's what my view is kind of all about. Now, if we go back into our ByDesign report add-on, we go into our views here. It might take a couple of, oh, I don't see that exact name, company period comparative. I'm seeing consolidated. So it might take a minute to show up in here, but it will show up in both. And it also works in both directions. So let's do something, the same thing in here. So let's go into our view and modify this slightly. So why don't we add, let's add profit center to this. And profit center is in the rows, and that's fine. It's maybe a little bit strange to show it, but that's okay. So I'm going to say save as profit center summary, something like that. So I'm going to give it a name in here. And in order to see it in here, we're going to just refresh this report, and it's going to go and it's going to sort of do a refresh on all of the data as well. So now if I go into my views, you can see that that profit center summary that I saved inside ByDesign is now available to me here. So it doesn't matter which product you save it in, you'll have the ability to access it either way. And now my report, kind of looks like the other one. So that's a very powerful feature. And what I do find is sometimes it's a little bit easier for me to work inside ByDesign instead of dealing with these kind of smaller buttons and panels here. If you are having any challenges with the Excel add-on, it can kind of be useful to sort of be doing this jointly inside SAP and Excel, or I can experiment in here, you can discard in one. So keep that in mind, it just gives you some flexibility on how you want to build your report. Okay, let's talk about some other features in here that I find useful. So if you want to sort of abandon a report, there's a few different ways that you can do that. There is a remove report button. You can use this. Gives you a little warning message. Are you sure you want to do it? And it does, because we're doing a bunch of pivoting and views and data and combining stuff, sometimes it's not a very clean experience like this. So I find it can be useful to just delete the entire sheet. and we can add a sheet, do something like that. So same thing goes with copying the reports. So let's do another quick report insert. So let's say you want a tab or you want to have something like a trial balance. So we've got a very simple trial balance here. And then let's say that you also want this trial balance to show, something like accounting periods across the columns. So in order to kind of easily duplicate this report, if you use the duplicate feature inside Excel to copy the sheet, that is going to break the connection. It will, let's just do it quickly and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to just create a copy of this. So it is going to create a new sheet, but this sheet is not really connected to, you can see the refresh button is grayed out. And so all it has done is copied over your data. Now that in itself can be useful utility. So if you are maybe just wanting to take this data and now do some sorts or some manipulation in Excel and you don't want it to be connected to ByDesign, that can be a useful feature, but oftentimes you do want it to be connected. So I'm going to delete this sheet and I'm going to show you a different way to do it. So let's instead just add another sheet to our workbook. And so let's call this, trial balance summary. And let's call this sheet trial balance by period. And so if I've done a lot of work on my selections and things like that, and all I want to do is a minor modification to my view, what I really want to do is just take advantage of not having to sort of select all of that data in the other tab. I find this copy report button really useful. So click on that while you're clicked somewhere in your report, go to your new tab, and then hit your paste report. And so it's going to bring over an exact copy. And now I can add my modification to it. So let's say I want to take my accounting period, bring it into the report. So I have something like that. And now I have very easily kind of replicated out the report and only made a minor change to the one parameter. So I know that I'm essentially getting the same data, except for that minor change. So I use that feature all the time. I will also sometimes use it even in the same panel. So I could take copy report and I could just paste it below. So maybe I want to just take this report. I want to go into my selection and perhaps I want to limit the GL accounts that are showing in that report. So I oftentimes will have a worksheet where I might have reports sort of stacked one on top of each other. Now, I do find that it is these reports are dynamic, right? So next month when we go in here and we hit the refresh button, the number of rows may grow or increase or decrease depending on the data that month. And so it typically does not overlap the other reports. So that's usually not a problem. But refreshing reports is a problem if you are manipulating formatting inside a report, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you want to draw attention to a specific row and start doing some Excel features, so I can go and let's say I want to highlight this row yellow. If we go back to our SAP ByDesign ribbon, and let me get rid of these panels. And actually, sorry, let's do that inside this one here. So I've got a bit of room on the side. So we're going to do the same exercise. Let's highlight something. And you can see your highlight goes off to the right. And then next month you come in and you refresh this report to get your new month's data. And what it does is it overwrites all of your formatting. Any formatting that you did at the row level off to the right is still there. Now, of course, that may not even line up with supplies inventory. Maybe supplies inventory will now show up in row 6 because you've added a new GL account. So keep that in mind. That is a challenge, and I will talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Because if you are trying to add your overlaying format for presentation purposes, you're going to have to use a different approach. Okay, so a couple other features that I'd like to kind of draw your attention to. If we go into building out your panels, let me just run you through some of the reports that I've done in the past. So I already mentioned very handy if you want to drop in like a GL detail report. One thing I will mention, inside SAP, you have the ability to drill down. So if you're using a GL detail report, you should be aware of this. If you right click, you'll get a little drill down. That's inside ByDesign, not inside Excel. So if you want to know, what more detail about this customer invoice, Excel does not have the capability to take you beyond the report. So do keep that in mind. If you want to open up this customer invoice, you need to run this same report inside SAP, not in Excel. So that's one drawback to Excel. Now, you can see here I've gone through some reports and just kind of built out a report workbook where I've just pivoted the information differently. So I've got a consolidation with my elimination entries. So once again, it's how I build the report. If I want to, update this for the current month, I can just open up my selections and views. I can double check my parameters. I can hit the refresh button and it's going to update all of the dollar amounts. I built myself, a balance sheet. So once again, just showing the idea that you can have multiple reports running side by side. Now, this is a nice feature in Excel. So a lot of your reports are built based on hierarchies. So anything to do with your org structure or your GL account financial statements are built on a hierarchy. So your balance sheet, your income statement, how can we tell it's a hierarchy? Because you've got your collapsers. So these same collapsers inside here are a little bit trickier to use. So you have to sort of click on these one at a time. Alternatively, I could go into that particular item inside the row. I could go into the characteristic settings and I could indicate a level. So I could say, well, take everything to level 3. And then it'll sort of consistently apply that expansion. But that's quite a few clicks to kind of get to that. So if I want to get this to level 2, I have to do that. But the beauty of Excel is I've got that built in with just a single click. So I can very easily do that. And this just natively incorporates the grouping feature inside Excel. So that's my expanders for my rows of my report, which are the report structure hierarchy inside your balance sheet and your income statement. And then in my columns, I have the same feature because I am incorporating my org structure. And this is a sort of org owner, profit center type comparative. So I can easily collapse the entire structure, or I could grab a single piece and do those collapse expands. So I think that's another nice, powerful feature inside here if you're trying to just do some ad hoc analysis, or you want to maybe print this out or do a PDF of this, and you can very quickly get yourself into sort of multiple displays before you send that out to people. So let me run through these other samples and see if I've got anything interesting going on. So here's another one where I'm really using the profit center expansion collapser. So putting profit centers, once again, that's part of my org structure. Profit centers roll up into your segments, they roll up into your companies. So right here at this level, I can easily see, Almica and Innovat side by side. I can collapse, or I can start expanding the entire company, and I can start working on different segments, or I can go all the way down to my profit center levels. So the beauty of Excel doing that, that's a really slick feature. This doesn't really relate to the Excel side of it, but this kind of segues into doing things outside of the report. So I do have a sample of a report where we have a partial ownership situation. So there's a 51% ownership, and there's different ways that you can do this. So we have done other Q&A cafes where we talk about building custom key figures. So quick reminder, what is a key figure? Inside your views, you've got your key figures are really all of these sort of darker gray, which are your dollar amounts or any sort of a value inside your report. So typically an amount or a count or something like that. So most commonly this is dollars, and all of these can be customized directly inside ByDesign. I won't go get into how to do that today. If that's something you're interested in, you can, go check our library on YouTube and you'll see that we have done presentations of that. So in this particular case, the math to do the 51% is built into an SAP ByDesign key figure. Inside Excel, I could do the same thing. So I could obviously build a formula to accomplish the same thing, right? Now, if that's my preference, that is fine, but you're going to have to sort of get used to the idea that, let's just do a little format copy here. Get used to the idea that even though you've sort of made this look the same as your report, it's not truly connected to your report. It's sitting alongside it. So if I do copy this down and then I refresh this report, the first thing you're going to notice when you refresh this report in a future month, if you go to the bottom of your report, you're probably going to have some sort of a gap, right? Your Excel formula does not go down far enough, or you have less rows and your Excel formula goes down too many rows. So that becomes a bit of a manual manipulation that you have to do inside the system. But oftentimes, I mean, once again, this is sort of the trade-off to have Excel and have the ability to join external data sources. So your external data could be a simple mathematical calculation like I've done here, or perhaps you're grabbing some, more complex budget data like head counts and things like that that you have in an Excel workbook, and you want to marry that data to your financial data. Then you can, start to write formulas and things like that. And so for that last piece, that's what I'd like to talk about. If you do want to create something, so I'm created a report here called an income statement. I just named this income statement basic. So I've got a simple income statement in here, but maybe I don't really like the way this report is formatted. So a couple things around SAP's, income statement formatting. You'll notice that, or you may have noticed that there's two different ways to roll up your data. So I'll bring attention to a couple of things here. Inside your ribbon for your ByDesign, you can access all of the same settings that you have in your other report. So today I have this inverted by rows. The standard view out of the box is that the roll-ups, so your sum row is above. And this is really just user preference, but I do find a lot of accountants would like to see their totals underneath, not above. So this is a challenge inside SAP because if you invert your settings, that does what you want it to do. Now you've got your total below. So here our cost of goods sold, our 3.514 is the sum of all these numbers. However, this also becomes a little bit harder to read because now cost of goods sold is not a header above. It almost looks like these accounts relate to net sales revenue, and they don't. This is the subtotal of that. So this inversion feature is very programmatic. So having it not inverted, you have nice, oops, sorry, I hit the wrong one there. The ranges hierarchy is what I want turned on. So having it not inverted gives you nice headings, but it doesn't give you subtotals below. It gives you your totals at top. So how do you solve problems like that? Well, then you are into potentially building your own report and referencing this data. So I started to do a little sample of what that could look like. So if you wanted to build your own sort of custom income statement, you can do whatever you want. You can format it. You can take advantage of, Excel using your colors, your underlines, things like that. You don't have to worry that this is going to get overwritten because this is something that's 100% in Excel. And then you just write formulas to look up your data. So here I've done sort of a VLOOKUP. So you could have some sort of VLOOKUP that references this report to retrieve those numbers the way that you want. Now, what is the risk here? Well, the risk is here. You add a new GL account and you now have a misstatement in this income statement, or you have to go in and you have to add a row or add a formula. So you do have to it does take some, I guess, strong Excel skills and some forethought to how you're going to build this to try and be as dynamic as possible. So for example, I've written a VLOOKUP that's looking up for anything that starts with a 4. It's using the star to make sure that it grabs any new revenue accounts that would appear. Um, and then you could build in some, proof formulas, outside of your print range that sort of double check the math, make sure that your balance sheet's actually balanced, that your income statements tie out to your balance sheet. So those are the sort of tips and tricks I would recommend in order to make sure that any custom report that you're building with this layout is not going to get sort of disconnected because your core data has changed due to a new GL account or some other attribute changing in your report. All right, so I've kind of covered a lot of data. One other thing I will mention just specifically on the income statement, because this is sort of an important one. So you do have access in your key figures. I get this question a lot. So if we go to our amount company currency, you can see here that I've got the reverse sign turned on in this report. And what that's doing is it's showing my revenue as a positive and my cost as a negative. So I did want to draw attention. There's a lot of settings inside the report. I'm not going to run through every one of them, but this is one that I just get asked about a lot. So out of the box, your reports run like this, do not reverse sign. And this is typically a major kind of issue when you do want to do your final presentation. Most of the accountants already feel comfortable that, yeah, credits are negative and debits are positive. So they're used to maybe doing their casual analysis. But if this is something you want to give a final report as a presentation to your shareholders, you could do the math here, right, to invert it, like build it into your formula. Or you could, if you are using this as your report data, you can turn on this option, just highlight the specific key figure that you're targeting. So in this case, the amount, and then you have access to that there. So I did want to bring that to your attention because that's often something people don't know about. So I've said a lot. Before I kind of do an overview, I just want to maybe check and see if there are any questions accumulating.
I
Catherine, are
don't
you
see
seeing it? Yeah?
No, I don't see any questions as related to this topic. We did have a couple that I had sent private messages to the askers. So please make sure that you check that. But I don't see any others here.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what's going on with my GoToMeeting because I don't see the question panel. So that's why I wanted to check with you. So if you're not seeing any, I'll just go to my close.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other than the ones we received earlier, but those were questions in regards to something else there.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so last chance for you to get a question in. Otherwise, yeah, just a quick summary of what we covered today. So just a couple tips. So build selections and views inside BYD. Sometimes that's a little bit easier. It's very easy to pivot and get the data really quickly. And then you can, just launch those selection views inside Excel. But remember that you can save updates in either product and it is completely compatible. It will show up inside ByDesign if you saved it in Excel and vice versa. Remember to use dynamic parameters. So current period is probably the biggest one, but anywhere that you can build a dynamic parameter means that your report will just automatically sort of update for the future period. Sometimes that is to your detriment. So if you are doing an analysis of a problem inside a specific period, that's where you're going to want to make sure that report, maybe you've hard-coded the specific month or date that you want to analyze so that you don't open that report a few days later. It's now November 1st, you hit the refresh button and all of your data kind of unexpectedly changes. So keep dynamic parameters in mind. Name selections and views with interchangeability. So once again, if you're making an income statement view, don't talk about which companies are in it because the companies belong to the selection, not to the view. That's a little bit of a hard thing to kind of wrap your mind about, but your selections and views can be combined and matched however you want. So you want to be very thoughtful in how you name them. Some of the specific advantages in Excel, so really the formatting, the presentation, having multiple reports across multiple tabs and making one large workbook. The auto collapsing that I showed you, and the marrying of external data sources. A couple of disadvantages, I was trying to think of Excel, so ensure that those parameters are current. I mean, that's the same thing that you can find inside the ByDesign, but maybe it's a little harder to see if you've got the selection or view panel hidden, which is very easy to do in Excel. The other disadvantage is you can't drill down to source documents. You can't do that necessarily in every report, but if you're running a GL detail, you could drill down to the journal entry, the AP invoice, whatever it is. And just a couple more tricks. So yeah, most of the settings in BYD are there in Excel. So just in case I didn't quite bring that to your attention, so going into the settings, all of those settings that you see here. So whether it's you want to repeat recurring rows, things like that, not have blanks. If you want to have your hierarchies built in, all of those settings are there under this sort of subtle button, so very easy to miss. Same settings are here, but spread across some subtabs inside ByDesign. And don't forget that reverse sign, so that's a big one. Use the copy report feature in the ByDesign ribbon if you do want to replicate your report very easily and sort of preserve the settings that you've built into that report. So that's it for me. If there's no other questions, I will hand it back to our happy moderator. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks so much, Alex. I do just want to say that if you do have a question that isn't related to today's topic, you can always reach out to us at VistaView. That's VISTAVU at vistaviewsolutions.com.